You need to remember that the industry at that time was really fragmented, and beekeepers had big crops at times and then nothing but. And selling honey for beekeepers was very difficult in the early days, and Tim and Bert Smith of Capilano actually gave some security to those beekeepers, and they were able to get supply agreements which gave them some certainty to be able to sell their honey when they produced it. Since then, it's developed a national brand, and with advertising and a lot of innovation with packaging have been the things that have kept Capilano at the top of the tree ever since.
Tim and Bert Smith identified a real big problem in the honey industry, which was that the beekeepers had not a lot of power as sellers. They were producing greater quantities of honey, and their markets were controlled by other people. So they kind of had the vision to bring all the beekeepers together in a cooperative, and then, that pretty quickly caught on to other beekeepers, and it grew over time. And those beekeepers were shareholders, and they invested in the company as well over time through their shareholding and equity, and it built the basis for the company. They felt a sense of loyalty to it, and the company felt a sense of loyalty to those beekeepers. He had the vision of having a national operation. So they started here in Richlands in Queensland, and of course went to Sydney, made acquisitions in Victoria. So that was all pretty much done by the time Tim had resigned as managing director. So he really set up the footprint and the national vision of the company. So both Tim and Bert Smith, they brought a family culture to the business, because Bert Smith was a beekeeper himself, and they had a love of the industry. They brought the beekeepers to be at the centre of the company, and the generational opportunities for those beekeepers. So they instilled those values, and they're still in the company today.
I think the family nature of the business has kept the trust of the beekeepers, and even to this day there are beekeeper directors on the board of Capilano. I think in later years, being a cooperative had some drawbacks. The only reason you needed to have shares was to have a honey supply agreement. So when beekeepers wanted to retire, it was difficult to really get the true value of those shares back for them.
When we initially moved from a cooperative to a quasi-publicly listed company on the Bendigo Stock Exchange, the beekeepers still had a 75% voting rights. What the cooperative structure brought us in the early days was not a high concentration on profitability. We invested a lot of the money and the profit back into the business, either through honey price for its beekeepers or through infrastructure and its operations. So the honey price is equal for everyone. So whether you're a beekeeper in South Australia or Western Australia or Victoria, or if you're producing a certain type of honey, everyone gets the same price. I think the acquisition strategy about getting the big brands in Australia and bringing them all together into one house was really smart. The real big jumps we took was the nationalised positioning of the Capilano brand on the back of acquisitions of Barnes in Victoria, Alauri in New South Wales, and then the packaging really revolutionised what we're doing. The Twist and Squeeze, 1991, was an amazing seller. I don't think at that time the company couldn't keep up with the volumes. That's how revolutionary that was to the market. And then the upside down pack that followed in 2001, and then the newer version in 2006. So the export of honey in the early days was really, Australia was a surplus producer of honey. So we were a bulk commodity exporter of honey. Europe, USA, those type of places. Sometimes in big years, that'd be thousands of tonnes. And at times we'd make losses on that money and equalise it across the business with the retail business. As time went on, that practice as honey supply changed, and also as we developed retail markets, export retail markets, which gave us a better return for the product, we concentrated more and more on not selling bulk commodity honey and selling packaged retail products. 20 years ago, the late 1990s was some of our peak crops. I think there was 19,600 tonnes. In 2003, that had dropped to closer to in the 13,000 tonnes. What we see now is an average crop for us is 10, 11,000 tonne. So I think we're expecting an average crop this year which might be allowed about 11,000 tonne.
And in more recent years, there's not as much honey produced in Australia, and the focus has been developing retail markets, high-value retail markets overseas, and developing sales into China and Japan and places like that, which probably return per kilo more than we can get in the local retail market.
In terms of export volume of honey in the world market, we're a very small player, so maybe 1 or 2%. But in terms of retail exports and the presence of an international brand, so the company's got export markets in some 32 countries. It's a brand that's recognised around the world. We're obviously been in the Middle East for a very long time. It's a very cultural part of the Middle East, honey. And we have had, rather large business in Saudi Arabia and throughout the United Emirates since the company started. For instance, when I first took over the company in 2012, we could see our beekeepers dropping off. That was a real worry for us. So we had one strategy back then, which was get the honey price higher and make the beekeepers' businesses more profitable, and we'll see them expand, which is exactly what happened. As a consequence of that, honey prices going from $3 to $5 we're seeing the industry recover. We're seeing a lot more beekeepers invest in the industry, and we're seeing that multi-generational family business continue. So, our supply is stronger now than it has been for a very long time.
That was pretty traumatic when you've got a company with a relatively high level of debt, and your banker says to you that despite the fact that you've met all your repayments and haven't breached any covenants, we want you to reduce your debt level by 50%, and you'll need to do a capital raising in the middle of a GFC. That was pretty traumatic. You used those traumatic periods as an opportunity to do something even better. So we restructured the company, did a capital raising, did a partial listing, and the share price for that capital raising was 70 cents. A lot of those people sold in the recent acquisition of Capilano, or 2 years ago, at $21. So they, in terms of return, did really well out of that.
So the 2018 acquisition essentially privatised the company off the ASX. We were at a bit of a crossroads of what was next for us. We either had to get bigger or probably be gobbled up by someone else. And Wattle Hill and the consortium came along at a really opportune time for us. But I must say, to the beekeeping community, the company's operating in the same way it has since foundation. They're running the company with a similar bunch of values, so I think it's been a good position for us to be privatised.
To their credit, they've recognised the value of what was in place when they bought it, in terms of the loyalty to the suppliers and to the employees. I'm proud of Capilano making it, or creating an opportunity where those beekeepers that have gone from little backyard businesses struggling to make ends meet to actually quite large family businesses that are, agricultural prime production businesses that are important to their communities.
We're a Queensland company for sure. Tim and Bert Smith started the packing business here at Richlands. We're still on the same site today. Got no plans to move from there. We're proud to be local. We're proud to employ Queenslanders.
He said it was important, and there's always Capilano in my pantry, and there's Capilano at Parliament House.
Well, in the 80s, I think we were doing $26 million revenue, whereas today, we're heading towards 140. And there was 18 employees at head office, in the 80s, but today there's 164 employees across the business. So the business has grown. We see ourselves in the top 10 honey producers in the world.
Capilano is one of Queensland's great acorn to oak tree global stage success stories. Capilano has become Australia's leading honey brand and one of the most significant high-tech honey producers in the world. Capilano was innovative before other business people could spell the word. Capilano had to deal with the big gorillas and dragon managers at Coles and Woolworths in the more brutal days of supplier relationships. And it was only the strength of their brand that enabled Capilano to survive.
Capilano honey, rich in flavour, arguably from the healthiest bees in the world.